the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to move right along and recess. So we got all kinds of special things going on tonight. So we're going to recess from this meeting for just a few minutes and put on our Yountville Housing Authority hats. And so we're having a special meeting of the Housing Authority, which, just so people understand the protocols, we have a separate agenda for that, and we will be hearing from Andrea Clark in just a moment. Welcome. But we just have to go through a few details. Let me get my agenda here. And so, roll call, can you confirm that we have all members present?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. All members are present.
Thank you. So there still is an opportunity for public comment on anything not on the Housing Authority agenda. I'm kind of guessing that there's no one here to speak to us on that behalf, so I'll move right ahead to our presentation. So we do have a presentation on the Housing Authority of the City of Napa, the annual report. Andrea, welcome. And we'll hope that that microphone is already on, so we'll find out in a second.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor and council members, for having me here this evening. And I'm hoping I can man the clicker and talk at the same time. Anyway, this evening I'm here to give you a brief report on the housing services that we've provided this year for the town under our housing services contract. And is it going to work?
I think you should just be able to roll roll it forward.
There we go. Okay. All righty. So the town does contract with the Housing Authority annually to provide housing services in a variety of different ways. And most importantly, we provide technical assistance related to a variety of housing functions, the monitoring of the affordable housing, your for sale units and your rental units, and any other kind of technical assistance that the staff may ask us to provide. Yeah, let's see. Okay, I'm going to give this to you. So, our main function that we provide in the county-wide activity for you is our rental assistance program. And this is one of the biggest programs that our Housing Authority does administer, and we receive funding from HUD annually to provide rental assistance vouchers countywide. And right now we are managing a portfolio of 1,170 vouchers with an annual budget of $9.95 million. And of those 1,170 vouchers, we have 14 that are here in the town of Yountville that residents are using here in the town of Yountville. And unfortunately, there's another 45 on the wait list that want to receive some type of assistance. So that gives you an indication that there still is some need for affordable housing or some kind of subsidy for low and very low income households here. This last year, HUD did reduce our budget by $220,000 in this program, which was only a slight 2% reduction. However, we have not had to rescind anybody's voucher, and we're able to go ahead and fully fund that program with our reserves, and anybody that's coming off the program, we just haven't been issuing any new vouchers. So those 45 that are on the wait list is going to be an awful long time for them to receive a voucher, unfortunately. Each year, the voucher holders do receive and do go through an eligibility appointment with our caseworkers at the Housing Authority, and they review their qualifications and then do an income recertification, review all the regulations of the program, and then we also have an inspector that goes inside each of the unit and does a health and safety and building code inspection. And so we do touch those people a couple times a year and make sure that they're living in a safe and clean environment. Okay. The other area countywide activity that we do provide for you is I do sit on the Continuum of Care Committee and represent the town. And this Continuum of Care committee does meet with, it's comprised of the local nonprofit agencies and our housing agency and other housing agencies that, and the county Health and Human Services. And we gather to discuss how we might be able to end homelessness in the county. And this year we were awarded a little over $515,000 to provide rental assistance services and case management in the county. And then during the last week of January each year, HUD does ask us to do a point-in-time count of all the sheltered and unsheltered homeless in the county. So this was done this last January 29th, and it was reported that we had 285 homeless in the county of Napa. 91 were unsheltered, and I am glad to tell you that there were no homeless on the streets here in Yountville, and none of the homeless that we did count report that they were actually from Yountville. So the committee continues to look for other collaborative ways and other funding that we might be able to assist the homeless and be able to get those folks off the street and get them into safe and decent housing. It's a little hard when HUD keeps cutting our budgets, but we're trying to work together and figure it out. So the next area that I'll talk to you about is our standard housing services. Under this area, we provide compliance monitoring for your affordable housing units. For the for sale units, we go and check to make sure that they are being owner occupied. We make sure that they pay their taxes, property taxes, and make sure that they're carrying homeowners insurance, current homeowners insurance. And then we also respond to any refinance requests to make sure that that new loan that they're putting on the property does comply with the regulatory agreement that is on the property. And then also then with the rental, for rental affordable housing, we do check with each of the property managers to make sure that they are renting to the appropriate income levels and that they're charging the appropriate rent for the affordable units. We do an income certification, not certification, but we do an income check with the tenants themselves to make sure that what the owners are reporting to us is correct information. So during this past year, we did provide, and I've been doing some continual technical assistance with the Hopper Creek Apartments, and we did talk to them this year. They're going through now their recertification, income recertification process, and so they asked me to give them some help with that and make sure that they're doing it properly. And they did tell me that they are 100% leased now, which was exciting to hear. So the town does have a total of 100 affordable units. Of those, there's 28 for sale or the below market rate units and 72 rental units. And as you know, there's going to be 4 new affordable rental units coming on board from the Vineyard Oaks subdivision. And so we'll, when those units are ready to be leased up, we'll work with the developer to make sure that they are going to be renting those units in accordance with the town's preference policy, and then also give them some technical assistance on how to do the income certification and to keep their records and et cetera. So overall, for a town your size, you've been very successful in providing affordable housing units. It was reported in the recent Napa County Housing Task Force report that of your affordable housing units, they comprise 8% of your total housing stock. So that's a great number for the size town that you have, and those affordable units do serve the very low income and our low income and some of our moderate income workers here in town. And so you should applaud yourselves for the amount of housing that you've been able to provide. Lastly, I wanted to report on some of the technical assistance that we've provided. We have provided the staff some technical assistance in drafting that affordable housing agreement for the Vineyard Oaks subdivision. And then also in response to the town and to the staff's concerns about maintaining the affordable housing stock, we're currently preparing 2 grant applications to the California Housing and Community Development Home Program and the Cal Home Program to be able to receive some rehabilitation funds through those, to be able to update and upgrade the housing stock here. Those grants will be earmarked for low-income households that are owner-occupied units, and those funds will then be used to do any kind of building code issues that might arise from those properties, or any health and safety issues that need to be addressed. And we anticipate that we'll serve about 32 households if those grants are fully funded. So we're pretty excited about the possibility of receiving those funds and managing that program for you. The applications are due the first part of July, and generally they let the recipients know by the December, January if you're awarded funds. Contracts usually go out about springtime, April, May, and then so it's hopeful that we might have a program operational by late spring to summertime next year. So we're excited about that new adventure. Yeah. So my housing manager and myself have been available to the staff whenever they've had questions or technical assistance that they need, and we are looking forward to our next contract period with you and continuing our great working relationship that we do have. So I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Great. One I'll start off with is, have you had many incidents where on-site management has had to deal with either residents that were not legally meeting the requirements, or any concerns of any of the housing units? It seems like it's been very well behaved, yes.
Yeah, everybody's been behaving, so yeah, it seems like it's working really well. And even there's been a change of ownership on the, what are they called, the Burgundy Commons, I think.
Girardi Place?
And then Girardi Place, there was a change of ownership in those units, and the property managers contacted me right away to make sure they're complying with everything. So that was great. When they contact me, I really like that, instead of me having to dog them. So
right,
yeah.
Good. Other questions from the council?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Hall?
Ladies first.
Councilmember Dornbecker? Okay.
Thank you. Are the families who are awaiting the vouchers, the 45 families that are on the list awaiting vouchers, are they in housing here now, or do they have to wait to get the vouchers to get housing?
They are currently living somewhere. Somewhere in the town of Yountville. However, they do not receive any kind of rental assistance from us. They are waiting for their name to come up on the list.
And so you receive federal HUD funds, but what about the state?
No, there is no monies that comes from the state for that program. There are grants that you can apply for. However, they're highly competitive, and so we mainly just receive the funds from HUD, and then we are a direct recipient. So they give us an allotment every year for that. We don't have to actually apply for it each year.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for doing such an excellent job with our citizens.
Are you ready to go,
I
Councilmember
was
Hall?
trying to be polite. That's unusual for me, I know. Thank you. Thank you for presentation. You mentioned briefly on HUD as one source of funding. What are the other source of funds that you guys have access to, just for clarification?
Well, we do receive community development block grant funds, which is also a funding source from HUD, and we use that for our owner-occupied rehab program in Napa, and then we also do rental rehab and some other, they call them CIP, so community improvement projects, and so we've used those to help, like some of the homeless shelters do improvements and things like that. So that's one source. We've concentrated on with our down payment assistance programs, and we've used the home program funds and the Cal Home program funds. We've received some from Begin program, which is also through community development in Sacramento. And we've received a couple other small grants through some of the propositions that, but the main funding sources come through HUD.
Okay. And as a percentage, I know we've talked about this in the past, but Yountville, you said was 8% of our housing stock is, I'll say,
Affordable
set
units.
aside or entitled for to affordable units. What is that relative to the rest of our county peers?
Oh, I think it was it 5%? Yeah.
We're number one.
I'm just curious because I think it's something that others should be cognizant of in this
Right.
community, that we try to obviously take that leadership role in most of the things that we do, and hopefully
Yes.
we continue that
Yes.
as a council.
It was a significant number compared to your existing housing stock.
I want to add a clarification because our number is a very true number. It's actually the affordable deed restricted. Some communities say, well, we've got a lot of second units and we'll throw those in. Ours are actually, no, these actually really exist. So we are, I think, number one in the percent of housing stock. So when you think about it, I think we are doing a fair amount as a community to try to make sure that we're balanced and that the people that are working at all levels can be a part of the community. There's two other things I want to share on Andrea's comment and also Richard. Unfortunately, over the last 15 years, the town of Yountville is not a community development block grant entitlement city. So that has taken a lot of money that historically is able to go into housing or site and facility. We just don't get it. So I think we're excited, as is Andrea, when we talk about the fact that we're getting into the game and being more active with her support, and with, I think, the effort of Sandra and Nathan, we're going to be a little more active in looking at where some support. Also, in terms of support, Andrea and her team help us, and you'll see a little bit more of that as we go into the housing element update and some of the programs, because it's very likely that town staff, Andrea and others, we're going to have to work on some different programs. We may have to look at using the Housing Opportunity Fund differently than we have in the past in programs going forward to meet some of our affordable, or to perhaps develop funding structures to buy the affordable housing when it comes up. So, there's some things that we're starting to have some conversations, and we're kind of excited, but it will be things that we need to continue to do. And I do think we're finding that right now the investment in rental stock is the right decision. More people are needing that. They're not able to come up with the down payment assistance. We don't have a traditional first-time home buyer program. I don't know that would probably be the smart place to put money, in all honesty, in Yountville, but we are going to be looking at a broader thing, so there will be some opportunity for some broader discussion as we continue down with the effort to move forward with adoption of our housing element.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
And I would just follow up on that, I think the town can take a lot of pride in the fact that we don't just create a plan, we actually build and support the construction of the units, where some cities will just do the bare minimum required with their regional housing need allocation and say they can build them somewhere, and then they never build them, and we do. The challenge for us, 17 units, I think, is what we're looking at this next cycle. That's a pretty small number to everyone else, but to us, that's still going to be a little bit of a challenge. So we need to
25% of the way there.
Yeah. So, no other questions? Thank you very much for that report. Yes, I see a member of the public apparently has a comment. Would you please come up to the microphone, identify yourself for the record, please? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andrea. I had two questions. One, what is the Section 8 wait time? And two, will she be administering any of the Proposition homeless veteran funds that come up with a bond issue?
Okay, I'll invite Ms. Clark to come back. She did reference the fact that none of the, we have no homeless here in Yountville, and I was curious about how you're calculating the number of homeless veterans, if there is a separation in category. But if you could just respond to his questions. First was about Section 8.
There you go, Section 8 wait list, yes. The Section 8 wait list currently is closed. So anybody who is currently on the wait list stays on the wait list, but we're not accepting any new names on the wait list. and it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 years before any somebody who would be at the bottom of the list could potentially move to the top of the list. We do give preference to veterans and elderly.
And just very quick, if you could give a very quick explanation of Section 8, just so the rest of the audience understands what that category is.
Section 8 is a rental assistance program where we receive funds from HUD. We serve the very low and low income population with that. People do have to become income eligible to receive assistance. The recipient of the voucher pays 30% of whatever their income is as their portion of the rent, and then the voucher, the housing authority pays the other 70%. And those funds go directly to the landlord, and then the tenant pays their share directly to the landlord.
Great. Thank you very much.
And with regards to the Veterans Program, I am not aware of that program, I have to say. I know that there is some VASH vouchers, Veterans Assistance vouchers, that we can receive from HUD. However, you have to have a veterans hospital nearby where it's easily commutable to be able to receive case management, and we don't have a hospital close enough to really be able to qualify and be competitive for those vouchers. The new bond money, I'm sorry, I have to say I'm not familiar with.
Well, I would say in all candor, since the election results, the regulations and the process for the release of those funds hasn't actually been promulgated yet, so I don't think anybody knows what the process is going to be. So I am very confident that Andrea and her team will be doing their best to ensure that Yountville and all of Napa County will receive whatever bond proceeds we can.
And if just one last question, if you could provide your website so that if people wanted to follow up further on any of your programs or find out how to apply, if you could share that with us.
Our website is www.cityofnapa.org/ then spell out the word housing. And that takes you to our Housing Division webpage within the City of Napa's major webpage. And there's information on our rental assistance programs and our home ownership programs.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
A little extra time with Andrea. Seeing no other questions or comments about the presentation, thank you again very much for that report. And we're going to move on to the Housing Authority consent calendar. We have 2 items. Is there any discussion or action on those items?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other business on this agenda, I will adjourn from the Housing Authority and reconvene our regular Town Council meeting, and we'll get right back into adoption of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or corrections?
Mayor, Council, I just want to, you earlier handed out a updated version of some of the permit conditions related to one of the items, so you have that for your information, but it does not change the action or recommendation before you.
I was going to pull that item 10D just so that we can have an explanation of what the edit was, so I plan on doing that, but seeing no other changes to the agenda, is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Dornbecker, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Seeing no proclamations, moving on now, this is public comment for the Town Council, if there's anything not on tonight's agenda. And I see no public moving forward, so we'll go to that consent calendar. I do want to pull item 10D, the permit for the French Laundry anniversary event, just for a clarification on the one kind of outstanding condition. But unless there are any other requests, we have consent items A, B, C, E, F, and G.
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor and Councilmember Dornbecker. In the spirit of Councilmember Hall.
That's right.
All in favor?
Aye.
So those all pass unanimously. Item 10D is the French Laundry 20th Anniversary Special Event Permit and Sound Amplification Permit. And we were handed recent update. I just wanted maybe if Samantha could explain on the second page in the red lettering, the Napa County Fire Marshal has verbally agreed to an altered fire lane condition, and I just wanted to make sure that the council is aware where it says awaiting written approval, that's from the fire marshal.
Yes. So I've spoken to him verbally, and he's indicated he's sending that in writing. So our standard is an 18-foot fire lane when we close any streets, has to be accessible. We've spoken with the fire marshal, who's willing to lower that standard for this event, and he feels that that's still safe.
And just for clarification, that's for emergency access only. That doesn't mean
Yes.
that there's a 12-foot
No, that
public
is for,
vehicle lane. That
for
means-
emergency access only if they needed to get a fire truck or other rescue vehicle in.
And was there any other substantive changes to the permit?
The only other change to the permit was we were able to verify the cost of adding a second trolley that day that would just go from the north to south on Washington Street and back, taking pedestrians potentially back and forth. So we did verify costs, so that gave the total an accurate amount. That was the only other change.
And that's as stated in this revised.
As stated in the revised, yes.
Very good. Any other questions or comments about this item from council?
Make a motion to approve item D in the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Hall and Moeller, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That gets us through the consent calendar. Seeing no presentations, we are headed to our public hearings, all three related to the Gates General Plan Amendment and Rezone for 2080 Humboldt Street. And I invite, we will start with our staff report.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you the general plan amendment and rezone of 2080 Humboldt Street, and that property is shown here in the crosshatch. And the property is adjacent to Gates Estates to the west and to Heston Tasting Room to the south. And both of these two properties were recently rezoned back in 2010 from Old Town Historic, which is the residential zoning designation shown in gold on this map, to residential scaled commercial, which is a commercial designation shown in purple. And tonight's action would square off the commercial district so that there's a cleaner transition between commercial and residential. The block is a predominantly commercial block, and other uses include Edward James Courtyard, Bouchon Bakery and Bistro, Maison Fleury, Petit Logis, and also Hurley's. Residential properties, however, are situated to the north and the east of the subject property, and these residential properties form the beginning of the Old Town district, which then continues north. The subject parcel is relatively small by commercial standards. It's only approximately 3,900 square feet, and it's developed with an approximately 3,000 square foot single family residence and a 650 square foot detached garage, and this comprises a floor area ratio of 70%. The general plan amendment and rezone before you tonight would change the designation from Old Town Historic to residential scaled commercial, and that is to allow the future conversion of this building into ground floor office space with a second floor apartment. And those future modifications to the building and the future use are not before you tonight. They would come at a future date as an application if this rezone is approved. So tonight's action is limited generally to the amendment of the general plan to change the designation from residential to commercial, and then the associated zoning ordinance amendment so that the two documents are consistent with one another. So when it comes to the general plan, there are policies that designate Washington Street as the town's main street and its core commercial district. And it further designates Washington Street between Humboldt Street on the north end to California on the south end as the retail district. And the retail district is further defined in the zoning ordinance with the retail overlay. And the overlay is shown here in the dashed line, and it starts with the Gates Estates property at the north end, includes all commercial parcels on Washington down to West America Bank, and then includes the vintage properties on the west side of the street. So the subject parcel is located on Humboldt Street, and it's one parcel remote from Washington. And what it does, if this property is rezoned, would create this natural transition from the commercial districts that are found and the uses that are found on Washington and the residential uses that are on the Humboldt Street. Further mitigating this transition is the fact that the proposed uses for this property would ultimately be office and residential, and that's at a lower intensity than the retail uses that are intended for Washington Street. And so the use is well suited for a transitional zone. When we talk about the general plan, there are also housing policies for replacement housing. And those occur when a residential property is rezoned commercial or when there is a loss of an affordable housing unit for reconstruction. Neither of those policies is triggered with this application because we do not lose a housing unit. The unit is downsized from a single-family residence to an apartment, but we don't lose it. And the existing residence is also a market rate unit rather than an officially designated affordable housing unit. So the proposed rezone is consistent with these standards and is supported by the general plan. We turn next to the zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance and design ordinance have the rules that implement the general plan. And there's a requirement that the zoning ordinance be consistent with the general plan, and there's the reason it's necessary for this application. Rezoning of the subject property would allow a professional office use and the second floor apartment. It would also allow general retail of a non-food or wine nature, including a bookstore, a shoe store, a pharmacy, but it wouldn't allow uses such as lodging, sit-down restaurants, or bars. So the uses are limited. And when it comes to retail, this parcel, as it is currently configured, is not really a good candidate for retail because of the parking standard and the constraints that the property faces. So the zoning ordinance includes the standards for on-site parking, and the proposed office use with the second floor apartment requires 6 on-site spaces. Only 4 can fit on the site as it's configured, 2 in the garage and 2 in a tandem configuration in the breezeway. There is an option to remove the garage in order to create 3 rows of tandem parking that would back out onto Humboldt Street and would provide the 6-space minimum, and that is the recommendation of staff, and it's included as a mitigation measure in the initial study to mitigate the project's impact to the street based on the change in use. I will note that the parking space for the apartment is not independently accessible, and this isn't ideal when planning parking for a mixed-use property, but it really is in recognition of the fact that this property has constraints, but that we can fit the 6 spaces, provided there is coordination between the residential tenants and the commercial tenants, and that can be done. Another reason that we're requiring the removal of the garage is because a change in parking triggers a requirement of the zoning ordinance that the use be brought up to the minimum parking standard. And it's the change in use that triggers this. If you recall the French Laundry, when they came before us, they were non-conforming as to parking as this property is, but it wasn't a change in use that triggered the additional spaces. This is different, and if the property were to continue to operate as a residence, it could continue as is, but the recommendation is that the garage be removed. FAR is another issue in the zoning ordinance, and the RSC district limits FAR to 40%. In this case, we're at an FAR of 70%, but if we go ahead and remove the garage, that's reduced to 53%, which brings it into closer conformance with the code. And I do note that since it's a legal non-conforming use, it isn't required to further reduce the FAR to 40 to be in compliance, because legal non-conforming uses are allowed to continue the use and maintain the structure, but strict rules apply that would prohibit the reconstruction after a voluntary demolition. The idea is that nonconforming buildings are eliminated over time or they're altered to conform. And this is to put all property owners on equal footing with the equal application of the ordinance. And this is raised for the town council's information because there really is a big difference between tearing down a nonconforming building and then building a new nonconforming building in its place from scratch, then maintaining the building and doing modifications that are necessary to deal with dry rot issues and structural issues. So any design issues and use issues will come before you at a future point, but I simply raise this for your awareness at this stage. We are recommending approval of the rezone and general plan amendment tonight, and there are several actions that we're asking you to take. The first is to adopt the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration, to amend the general plan to change the designation from residential to commercial, and then to amend the zoning ordinance to be consistent with the general plan. Thank you.
Any questions to the staff report? Vice Mayor?
Just as the clarification of your clarification, which was the fact that we're really only dealing with the zoning issue here, like we've dealt with before.
Yes.
So the talk about legal nonconforming, there's a proposal to change that from a legal nonconforming use to an allowed use under the zoning district, if we change the zoning district office. So that is not a legal nonconforming use in that situation.
Well, upon the zone change, it will be legal nonconforming as to FAR because it was, and that's because it was built prior to the rezone and prior to it being subject to the residential scaled commercial zoning standards. So we'll recognize it'll be legal nonconforming as to some aspects.
But turning the bottom floor into rentable commercial space, which it is not, that's not legal nonconforming.
Right. Then
Is
we're
that
talking
correct?
about a use, and the use will be permitted with a use permit in the future.
And then that's when we will look at the different issues of parking, et cetera, at that time.
Correct.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, I ask a question about how are we guaranteed the intent of the future use if we grant the rezone, we don't have a required application to say it will be what you're anticipating it being, office space and an apartment. I mean,
Right.
if that has to be dealt with in a future application, are we exposing ourselves to an unforeseen use by allowing this to be in residential scale commercial?
No, because while the zoning district allows a whole host of uses from retail to office, it is further regulated by the design ordinance that sets the parking standards and the other use standards that will be reviewed at a future time. If the applicant were to come forward in the future and say they wanted a 2-story retail structure, staff's recommendation would be, well, it cannot meet the parking standard, and that it would be that the change in use could not comply with the code.
So even though there are other options within the code that could be approved, the other conditions are so restrictive that virtually nothing else is going to fit based on parking and potentially other design issues.
That's right. As the building is in its current configuration, if the site were to be raised, perhaps that opens up opportunity for more uses, but then it's such a small parcel at 3,900 square feet, you'll really have trouble fitting everything. So there are just natural limiting factors with the parcel itself.
Okay.
And we get to evaluate those in the future on an application.
Councilmember Rolo, question?
Yes. Did the town or the applicant pay for the historic resource evaluation report?
The applicant did.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the staff report? Seeing no others, I'll formally open the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward and make any presentation if you'd like.
Hi,
Welcome.
Cindy Gates of Gates The property located at 2080 Humboldt is currently a single-family residence. I would like to propose the zone change to allow much-needed office space, just to kind of repeat what you have presented. The main floor is approximately 1,700 square feet, or an expansion of Gates Estate's real estate someday, if I ever wanted it, was part of my idea in making the office space. These businesses would conduct normal office functions with typical office hours, approximately from 8 p.m. in the morning, 8 a.m., I'm sorry, to 6 p.m. The second floor would be a one-bedroom, one-bath apartment of approximately 395 square feet to be rented out on a monthly or long-term basis. The floor plan would be very similar to the apartment at the Summerston building on Washington Street. The estimated number of offices could range anywhere from one large single office space to possibly 4 office spaces. The numbers of employees would vary on basis on the needs of the businesses that code allows, based on the gross floor area. The configuration would be determined by the needs of the tenant. Amenities could include a common area like a reception area, conference room, kitchenette, and a bathroom. Available parking includes, which you've discussed, up to 6 parking places if we remove the garage. A home inspection by a licensed contractor and a termite inspection by a licensed pet extermination company were performed during my purchase of the property a few months ago, and both reports show extensive termite and rot throughout the structure, including floor joists and whatnot, and this makes the current structure a little unsafe, requiring extensive renovation, both structural and cosmetic. I propose to leave the existing perimeter footprint of the building and size of the building up, and the square footage to remain the same for the first floor as it is, and create a second story apartment, the same size as the current second story is now, including the staircase of approximately the 395 square feet, as I said. The proposed modifications would result in the same amount of total square footage as the current structure is 95 square feet. The most noticeable modification of the structure that I'm thinking of doing would be to adjust the height of the proposed wall plate of each level, because it is so inconsistent throughout the structure. I think what they had done in the past is they had included old porches and such. So parts of the building upstairs and downstairs are hardly usable because you can't stand up. They really slope down. So I wanted to correct that. Additionally, I plan to improve the current building's appearance, of course, both in landscaping and in the design of the building. And I was thinking modern farm looking, just so that it would blend in here in Yountville and keep the character of Yountville. In order to complete the needed structural repairs and increase the first and second floor ceiling heights, I propose to remove the existing upper roof and upper floor, and the first floor low roof, and the foundation, first floor, and first floor walls would all remain. This would also allow for much needed repairs to be made in the lower framing and the upper portion, while the upper portion is removed. Improvements to the old electrical and plumbing and heating systems would all be updated to be safe and to current code. Access to the current structure via doors on, there is one door on each side of the building, and I just keep it like that. My goals for this property would be to manage and improve the property in a manner that's finally successful. No matter how great the design plan, it's no good if the owner for the community, if the owner or the community, if it all fails fiscally. So I was trying to make it a positive aspect with keeping the residential upstairs and providing much-needed office space for Yountville here by doing the office space downstairs. And again, just to help preserve the Yountville look by keeping the architecture compliant with the farm and traditional styling. I think that's it. If you have any questions, I'm able to answer.
Okay, questions of the applicant?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes, please. So I'm a little confused now. Are you planning to expand into that building yourself, or are you possibly thinking of renting it to 4 separate businesses if it's 4 offices inside?
That's what I'm thinking right now. At this point, I don't want to expand Gates Estates, but I'm just thinking in the future I might. So I was planning on doing anywhere from one large, it just depends who wants to lease the building, one large office space and just accommodate one person with the kitchenette, the reception area, the bathroom. And I was thinking like a copy area for copy machines and whatnot. Now, if up to 4 separate offices, I'd like to do that, just in case someone comes along and a winery comes along and says, hey, I'd like an office space, and somebody else in town says, hey, I'd like an office space, then I could accommodate them that way.
And is there any possibility that you might consider the 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment to be part of our affordable rental housing element?
I haven't thought about that right now, just because the price would help keeping it just a higher level. What I'm considering doing is just making it very high end for renting. We have lots of people that come in, like working salesmen, just like I property manage for Summerston as well. And that's who we get. We have like traveling salesmen that just need somewhere to stay, and it really helps with that need here.
On a monthly basis?
Oh, yeah. They usually rent it for a year or so. Right. So minimum of a month. Exactly.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have has to do with ADA compliance, and are there specific changes, I'm assuming there are, that you would need to make to the existing residential to convert it to what you would need to provide from a commercial standpoint? And I guess my question really is, how does that impact the renovation of that?
Well, currently there is a ramp up the left-hand side of the building that goes in.
Right. But it
Okay.
sounds like you're planning on redoing a significant portion of.
Right. I will accommodate the ADA
So whatever you
requirement.
need to
Absolutely.
do, you're very aware of that, okay.
Right.
And I believe staff is proposing 6 parking spaces, meaning the removal of the garage, and you're okay with that?
Right.
Okay,
I will do that if that's what you need. Right.
okay,
Mayor, I could share more on the ADA.
okay.
And the ground floor will be required to be brought up to ADA standards because that'll be open to the public and it'll be office space. The upstairs apartment doesn't trigger an ADA requirement. That only applies to projects of 4 or more apartments. So this is exempted as it is the Heston apartment and the Summerston apartment. So the residential apartment itself is exempt.
All right, so just the first floor, there's already bathroom facility, so all the necessary elements would exist.
And they'll be brought up to ADA standards
Right.
at the time of the renovation.
Right, okay. Thank you, those are my questions.
You're welcome.
So I'll invite any other members of the public that may have question or comment on this item. Yes, please come on forward.
Thank you. Jerome Gigliotti, 2 questions. One, has staff considered 2 of the tandem dedicated spaces being allotted to the apartment? And 2, how does the city view there only being 1 access and egress to the apartment and would consider an alternative fire exit?
I'll invite staff to answer those questions.
Given the size of the apartment, it only needs 1 exit, so the 1 stairwell will be sufficient.
And in terms of the parking,
Well, in terms of parking, that's something up for the council's consideration when you see the application before you at a future date, and that's whether you are willing to forego one of the required commercial spaces for 2 for the residential. Perhaps that's a whole lot easier to park and use because each row is designated. But there's a potential to enter into some sort of agreement or management for the use of those so it's shared and workable.
So the 1 unit triggers a single or 2
Single.
space? 1 single space per unit, for that unit. Okay. Any other members of the public? I see no other members of the public, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and invite council discussion and action. There are 3 separate actions to be considered, but I'll invite discussion. Councilmember Dornbecker, would you like to begin?
Well, looking at the map and the way this in particular, the way the line delineates where this is, it makes a lot of sense. I always lament the idea of losing a single-family home, and I think a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment would not accommodate a family. But on the other hand, knowing the paucity of office space available in the town of Yountville, I can understand the need for that too. So I'm inclined to say that this zoning change, which we would have to do in order to make any changes in the future, I'm inclined to support that, but I want to hear what the rest of the council has to say.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Hall, your comments?
Yes. Well, I mean, in general, I mean, we've we've looked at these kinds of conversions before, and this one is a more natural fit than some of the others that have been presented. We didn't, as far as I can tell, anywhere in the report hear from the neighbor about this parcel being converted to a residential scale, unless I missed it in the report.
The neighbor to the east you're talking about?
Yes, which would be Mr. Sather, I believe. But that, regardless of that, we did hear at one point in time when the Heston property was being designed that there was some potential conflict, and for a residential property, maybe this would resolve part of that issue. So in general, I mean, I can see that it makes sense, and I can feel comfortable with that. I mean, we do have a shortage of office space. It sounds like this might help us with that particular problem or challenge in the town. Without necessarily wiping out housing stock. I do agree with the commentary. It's not a single-family home, but there isn't necessarily a plethora of people who are looking to move into that parcel given the current constraints that it has. But it seems like it is a reasonable thing for us to do, and it would square up that edge of the residential zone commercial. So I'm reasonably comfortable with it.
Thank you. Councilmember Mueller?
I'm also comfortable with this being commercial. I spoke with the previous resident on numerous occasions before, and the bedroom is literally it's a very short sidewalk and then the front door. So the bedroom is really right on the street. I think it's just the way it is right now, because we're not really dealing with any change in use tonight. It just makes sense that is our commercial zone, although somebody just happened to be living in it before. So I think that this is the appropriate way to go. I'm fine.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
I would say that I'm generally uncomfortable with rezones, particularly residential property, although we've done more in the last 2 years than the previous 6 years, I think, that I've been on the council combined. But this is probably the last one to me that makes sense when you look at the maps and the impacts. We've done a couple, and I think what we've done makes sense. This one I'm fine with, honestly, for the reasons that have been stated here. And any kind of redevelopment is going to be extremely tricky. I mean, I think you're smart just to kind of keep it the way it is and work with that. But you knew that when you bought it. So at least your real estate agent should have told you. So I'm comfortable with this one. My only statement is, anybody else out there watching that's thinking about this, I can't see any other parcel in town where this makes sense.
Thank you. And I basically agree. My greatest concern was already addressed by staff about the somewhat open-endedness of rezoning this without a formal application that would restrict the possibilities, something that we had unforeseen happen on that parcel. But with the kind of severe limitations to the parcel, there's not a whole lot of creativity that you could even try to muster. So I'm comfortable with it. I look at this very similarly to the parcel that has now become the Heston property, which it seemed as Yountville has evolved over these decades, having certain housing units that have been really consumed by the commercial corridor, it doesn't make sense. But this, I don't think, will have any significant impact across the street if the parcels across the street ever get developed into housing. So I think this would be a very modest or zero impact change. So I can support that also. We do have 3 actions before us. The first, consider adopting a mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact. If there is someone that wants to take on that motion, I would welcome that at this time.
I can take this on. And
Councilmember Dornbecker, go ahead.
I wanted to let staff know how much I enjoyed reading that report for the environmental negative declaration. It was very interesting. But I move that we approve resolution number 3186-14, adopting a mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the Gates General Plan Amendment and rezoning for the property located at 2080 Humboldt Street, APNS 036-061-013.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker, seconded by Councilmember Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Would you like to consider another motion? Councilmember Dornbecker? Did you enjoy reading the
I'll make a motion to
Resolution
adopt
is-
resolution
I'll
number
defer to the gentleman.
Councilmember Hall?
3187-14, amending the general plan land use element to incorporate reclassification of the subject property from Old Town Historic to residential scaled commercial.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That also passes.
Then I would like to introduce and waive the first reading of Ordinance 425-14, amending the Yountville Municipal Code to amend Section 17.16.010 zoning map to incorporate the reclassification of the subject property from Old Town Historic to residential scale commercial.
Second.
Motion Hall, second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That's all 3. No strikes. Congratulations. We're going to move on now to a minor issue, adoption of our 2014-15 budget. Is just a little administrative item we have here.
Yes,
Finance Director, are you going to kick this off?
yes, I am. So the town's management team started work on the budget in February 2014, so we've been at it for a while. Council was also busy working on the budget. We conducted a series of 4 budget workshops. March 18th, we introduced the budget parameters and assumption to Town Council for feedback and direction. On May 6th at the council meeting, we reviewed our budget parameters and assumptions and highlighted budget changes and presented the general fund overview. And then on May 13th and May 27th, during special meetings, we did a detailed review of all funds, departments, and our fiscal policies as they relate to the budget. Just a few highlights from the town's operating budget. The town's budget is balanced with projected revenue sufficient to pay our current expenditures, along with our debt service on the town's lease revenue bonds, and fully fund the town's annual required contribution for OPEB. And we're also increasing our revenue stabilization reserve. A conservative projection of $5.9 million for transient occupancy tax is included in next year's budget, and that makes up 66% of our general fund revenue. That's a big chunk of our revenue. Our local and regional marketing efforts, along with a strong regional economy and the statewide economic recovery, are all key factors in sustaining this important revenue source for the town. Sales tax makes up approximately 11% of our general fund revenue. We're projecting that at $1,015,000 for next year, and that includes a factor for a 4 to 5 month closure of an important sales tax generator, the French Laundry restaurant. And property tax also makes up approximately 11% of our general fund revenue, and that's budgeted at $995,000 for next fiscal year. And the county will finalize their assessed valuation in early July, and we may see some growth in our tax roll. The combination of TOT, sales tax, and property tax equal 88% of our general fund revenue. And that's why the town is in the unique situation of having a voter-approved appropriations limit override, or GAN override, to allow us to both collect, appropriate, and spend the taxes that we receive. The general fund budget provides for cost increases for employee salary and benefits per our current agreements. Also has contractual cost increases for public safety and our animal shelter services. We've also included some funding for a 2-year limited term management fellow position in administration, upgrades for office software, our telephone system, and the town's website. We're continuing to implement our town's electronic records management system, and we're adding some additional services for managing our agenda workflows, civic engagement, and council vote tracking and display system. We've included funding for the town's 50th anniversary celebration. We're also converting a public works intern position to a full-time engineering technician. And we're adding a new Deputy Public Works Director position, which will be partially funded by savings from contract services. The general fund budget includes fund balance reserves. For our emergency reserve, we funded that per our policy at 20% of operating expenses, or $1,454,000. We've increased our revenue stabilization reserve at 12.5% of our annual TOT revenue, so $737,500. We have a reserve for insurance and claims retention of $50,000, a reserve for contingencies of $150,000, a reserve for legal contingencies of $550,000, and a reserve for future general plan update of $310,000. So that pretty much sums up the general fund. We also have our budget for water and wastewater utility enterprise funds, which we did review quite carefully as well. And we're in our 4th full year of implementation of our 5-year utility rate schedule. Now, our water utility operating fund is balanced, and that is subject to volatility based on our water costs for purchases from Rector Reservoir and based on water sales. We're, of course, promoting conservation due to the drought, but we are continuing to see steady revenue, and we're able to build some reserves which will help stabilize future rate increases, and also providing much needed funding for capital projects for water. The wastewater utility operating fund has still been challenged, has a slight deficit, and we are reviewing those operating costs and trying to keep them managed. We have had a mandated state Regional Water Quality Control Board project with our recycle water expansion, and that is underway, and we do have funding with our state revolving loan to fund that. So we will be continuing to monitor both utility enterprise funds over the next year, and we hope that we will have a balanced budgets coming forward with both of those funds. The town's also continuing its commitment to invest in capital infrastructure and maintenance, and not to take away from Graham's CIP, but all of the capital projects for the fiscal year are listed in the CIP section of the budget, and they've been included in both the Capital Projects Fund, Gas Tax Fund, Water Capital and Wastewater Capital Funds, and the Wastewater Treatment Fund. And we have 29 projects in the town's Capital Projects Fund, for a total of $4.2 million, and we have a total of 42 capital projects budgeted for next fiscal year, and the total, including the water and wastewater, is $6.5 million. So that's kind of a quick overview of the budget. The budget will be available on the town's website, and once it's been adopted and the final published budget, we will also have a copy here at Town Hall, and we also always have a public copy available at the library for the public to view. So with that, staff is asking council to adopt 2 resolutions. The first one before you, resolution number 3188-14, is to approve the OPEB funding policy that we discussed at our last budget workshop. And the second resolution, 3189-14, is to approve the operating budget, the appropriations limit and to reaffirm the remaining fiscal policies.
Great. Any follow-up questions? I know we've spent many, many hours already going through the details, so there may not be any questions, but Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Kathleen. Quick question. We have historically provided that pie chart for staff, for the residents or the constituents or
Yes.
anyone, frankly, that sort of
budget
lays
and
out
brief?
sources and funds. Are we going to do that again?
Yes, we will be bringing that forward to the next council meeting. It will be available probably before that time.
And it'll be on the web and all that good
Yes.
stuff? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because it kind of tells the community where we get our money and also where we spend it. And
Definitely.
It's actually really easy for a lot of people to get that. So.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the staff report? Any questions from any members of the public? Please. You might want to sit in the front row, save yourself a few steps.
I need the exercise, thank you. Jerome Gigliotti, I have two questions. One, is there any change or no change in the business license fees for the coming year? And the other is, does this budget incorporate consideration for the shifting of burden for state-mandated projects from the state to the municipality, which was Proposition 42? In other words, state-mandated programs, you're going to have to pay for them, the state won't.
We've gotten used to that.
You never get used to it.
The first question.
Let me take the first one. Business license fee is actually considered a tax, and under current California law requires voter approval. So the short answer to that is, while we have a very low, and let me stress low, business license tax, it is not changing, and staff has not recommended or proposed any action to change the business license tax.
Does staff have any comment about the impact of Prop 42?
There's really not much I can say other than we get very little on it.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of the town council, yeah, there really isn't that, there isn't a significant impact to certainly the town of Yountville, and not to most any other communities either. The ability to recapture Public Records Act funds from the state has been next to impossible to begin with, so no impact whatsoever.
Let me even be blunter. I would argue that it would cost the town more to process the application for the state mandated fees than it probably would cost us what we've incurred in terms of. So I don't see it as an impact at all.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll entertain motions. I'll invite the Vice Mayor to make the motion on this first item.
I'll introduce resolution number 3188-14, approving OPEB, other post-employment employee benefit funding policy.
I'll second.
Is that pretty satisfying?
It is.
The Vice Mayor and Councilmember Dornbecker seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And then we have another action to be taken.
No climate action.
Would anyone like to take that on? Councilmember Hall?
I'll make a resolution. I'll adopt. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 3189-14, adopting the 2014-15 operating budget, approving appropriations GAN limit for the fiscal year 2014-15, and reaffirming existing fiscal policies, general finance policy, town investment policy, use of long-term debt policy, OPEB trust investment policy, fund balance policy, utility enterprise rate policy, use of drought water reserve policy.
Second.
A lot of policies. Councilmember Hall, seconded by Vice Mayor Chilton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to folks that might be watching, it might seem like we zip right through that, but it's been many, many hours, and even more, many, many hours of staff time, Kathleen especially. Thank you. It's our great pleasure. I know I can speak for all of us, our great pleasure to once again have not only a balanced budget, but to be putting additional funds in reserves. This is a very healthy condition that we continue to be able to be in, and so it doesn't go without a lot of hard work and due diligence. So thank you for all that you've done, and I'm sure you'll be looking forward to leaving here maybe when the sun is just barely down instead of complete darkness. So thank you very much. And then there's this other little item, this capital improvement program. Graham, you've been quiet for so long this evening.
Yes, well, we have a quick presentation tonight about the capital improvement program, as Kathleen mentioned. As you know, we've talked about the capital improvement program quite a bit over the last few years. It's a financial guide, management tool, looking at available resources like grants, bonds, and essentially, in a nutshell, it's to protect, preserve, enhance, extend the life, and improve the town's infrastructure. Everything from our streets to our buildings to our water lines, our wastewater treatment plant, everything that we own. So over the past few years, the capital improvement program budget, this is both capital projects fund, gas tax, water, wastewater, has gone from 1.5 in 11-12, 3.3 to 6.4, and then as the finance director mentioned, 6.5 again this year. So there has been a significant increase in capital projects funding. This past fiscal year, we're just finishing up. This month is the Town Hall Structural Strengthening was our big project this year, over $3 million. Madison Yacht Project, which is under construction right now, is over $1.2 million. The North Yountville Bike Route Project was, both those projects were bond funded. North Yountville Bike Route had a grant, security systems, that was installing cameras and the air fiber out to the corporation yard. That was a general capital projects fund, video of the collection system. That was all 8 miles of pipeline were videoed, so we can assess how bad is it, where do we need to make the repairs first. That was wastewater capital fund. And then the geographical information system, we had the sweep last week where staff from Rancho, Cucamonga and town collected all the assets in the town, and it's all on the computer, and I can bring up on my iPad, and so we know where every street light is, where every water valve, everything in town, all of our assets. And we'll be doing more work this year. They'll be doing some mapping so that our crews each have an iPad and they can go out and they can click on things and find out, okay, well, what's here, and gets a lot of information. It's be very helpful. For this coming fiscal year, with the adoption of the budget, was also the adoption of the one-year capital improvement program for this fiscal year. 42 projects, various funding sources, which I mentioned. It's broken down with $4.2 million for capital projects fund, 1.6 for gas tax, those are street projects. The water capital fund is about over $200,000, and the big one is the recycled water project at 1.9. And then on the collection system, that's essentially 100% ratepayer paid. That's our sewer collection system. The joint treatment capital fund is split with the Veterans Home. So we're looking forward to getting a $1.65 million check from the Veterans Home to pay for their half of the recycled water project. So that will be very helpful. Also, we break the capital improvement program down into various categories: civic facilities, which are buildings; community projects, which are can be various things; parking improvements at various places; drainage and flood control are the Measure A funded projects, so drainage improvements, pipes, and Fennell, for example. Parks and recreation are park projects, where there's the park restrooms or the playgrounds or parking. Streets is mostly this will be our microsurfacing project, resurfacing our streets. Wastewater, mentioned the recycled water project, and then water will be some various pipe projects and our distribution system. And we have the gas tax fund, which that's being split mostly into the streets and transportation. And then for water, that's a water capital fund. And then wastewater, again, is split between the wastewater treatment and the wastewater collection. So the big projects this year are recycled water expansion project. The pipe is supposed to get delivered tomorrow or Thursday, and then they should start breaking ground next week on that project. We did have a good meeting, talk about all the SCADA and computer controls and how to fit that in with GIS and maintenance management. So they're all kicked off and talking and going to get all our equipment working. Community center repairs is about $800,000. This is based on the settlement from the lawsuit. So we're hiring the contractor to go make those repairs. So we'll have a fully functioning community center that will be operating and maintaining. Copper Creek improvements. The big project here is going to be on Fennell. We're looking at construction next summer, so there's funding in there, and then we'll be requesting additional Measure A money for the next fiscal year. So we'll see this one again next year. So we should be finishing up the design, getting all the permits, and hopefully coming to award the contract early in 2015. Slurry seal and microsurfacing, once PG&E is finished on Washington, hopefully January, February, then we can look at doing a slurry seal microsurfacing project on Washington Street and various other streets in town in the early May timeframe next year. Geographical information system, we'll be continuing that. Kind of split that project over 2 years with Rancho Cucamonga. Accessibility improvements, based on the draft ADA transition plan, which we hope to bring to you soon, there's about $1 million worth of work to make around town, whether it's a ramp or some improvements to the buildings. The town has done a lot, but they've also identified things that have changed and new requirements. So we looked at splitting that $1 million over 10 years. So there's currently $10,000 in the budget for that. Park equipment replacement project, we want to do a surfacing, a rubberized surface of the playgrounds at Yountville Community Park and Forester. And then also parking improvements at Yountville Park. And then the path from Oak Circle down to Mission, which is a missing link in our trail system. I want to do some design work, apply for grants, apply for permits so we can build that project. Thought I'd throw this in here. We're kicking off our recycled water project, and we're kicking off our capital improvement program for the year. So it'll be another big year for our capital projects. And in conclusion, we've been successful with grants, loans. This is a 5-year plan. And with the adoption of the budget with the operating budget is also adopted the capital budget for 1 year. And each year we ask that you adopt the capital improvement program to be consistent with the general plan. So this is essentially what we're doing with these projects. We're not building new streets or new buildings. If we do, we usually have a CEQA compliance with that as well. Mostly it's renovations, replacement, maintenance. So we really do see this as consistent with the general plan. And that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have one question.
Vice Mayor.
Back on page 5 or so, you had the sources of funds for the $6.5 million, which is very different. That one, 6. It's very different from what's in the staff report.
I did notice that. I apologize. I think we were getting the final numbers out of the budget when we were doing the presentation.
This is the one.
This is the most current number in the presentation. So these are the numbers from the actual adopted budget.
Well, that was going to be my question. Was where do we get $600,000 from gas taxes? But this makes more sense.
Yeah, and I think that may have been streets. So sometimes we'll put streets projects into the gas tax fund, but this is breaking it out separately because we don't get a lot of gas tax money, so this is the portion that we spend on streets projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And my understanding, I thought we had received that 1.6 just recently. It's been billed
invoiced
and promised but not received. Is that correct?
Yes. My friend Dave Gerard assures me the check is on its way.
Checks in the mail.
That will be very nice to receive.
Yes, it will.
This fiscal. Okay. No members of the public. So, council action? Anyone want to take a stab at adoption of this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 3190-14, approving the town's 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 2015 through 19 and finding it consistent with the general plan.
Second.
Vice Mayor and Councilmember Moeller seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, similarly, Graham, thank you for the very extensive, you and your whole team, very extensive work on this, and it makes it easier for us to check it off at the very end, but a lot of effort goes into it, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Jacob. Did a lot of work.
Yes, please do. Okay, let's talk climate. Climate action plan.
I'll just come up here real quick. Well, good evening. Tonight you have before you just a short staff report related to the formation of a climate action plan for the town of Yountville. Climate Action Plan, or CAP, is an adopted set of strategies and it's intended to guide the town's efforts for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meeting the town's reduction target. Other communities in the region have adopted CAPs as a response to recent state initiatives. And with the CAP, the town of Yountville will be able to comply to both the letter and the spirit of these initiatives, as well as really becoming an environmental leader in the region. Now, the Greenhouse Gas Ad Hoc Committee, which is Member Hall and Member Dorenbecker, They met with staff on April 22nd and May 20th and worked with Brian Reyes from Bar Sustainability and discussed the future steps that will be required as we looked at the feasibility of implementing a CAP. And based on these meetings, it was determined that the town should engage a qualified consultant to guide the effort, to engage the community, and to ultimately draft the plan. Potential elements of the consultant scope of work would include understanding the unique challenges and opportunities in Yountville, spearheading the community engagement aspect of it, drafting the CAP itself, and conducting environmental review. So based on these meetings that we had, it's staff recommendation that the council receive the staff report, conduct a discussion, and approve the recommendation to move forward in developing a CAP for the town of Yountville. And I know that the members of the ad hoc committee also have comments on it as well. So,
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will invite those said members of the ad hoc committee to start comments. First, are there any questions about the report itself?
No.
Okay.
From anyone?
Councilmember Dornbecker, go ahead.
Thank you. It's very, since I was on the Greenhouse Gas Inventory Ad Hoc Committee, this is such a logical next step forward, and I'm very excited about what we've come, the plan that we've discussed and hope to implement. It will engage, there'll be a lot of citizen engagement, there'll be a steering committee, and the task force. We are trying to come up with a very cool name for the task force. And
very cool, not a hot name, a cool name.
Exactly. And I think it'll be exciting to be able to bring the programs and things that are available to our residents. For example, I know that we have already announced the HERO program, but I don't think it's going to sink in until we have have it discussed, among a larger group in town, and that way the buzz will get going about it. So I'm very excited about following through with this and hoping to see what we have to do to successfully, do the work so that we have a good climate action plan that actually does reduce our carbon footprint. That's my goal.
Councilmember Hall?
Yes, and I'd like to thank everyone who's been participatory so far, because it's been, although a small group, we've been trying to get our arms around what this would look like in the community, because there are some things that are already being done. There's lots of little things we all can do to help improve and to support this process and this action plan. But really, the key to that ultimately is marketing and getting the community engaged with what could be, again, having Yountville be the leader in the community or the county with regards to these types of efforts. These are going on all over the country, and we're obviously just a small part of that, and we're looking at a relatively narrow scope as far as what we would be able to do from an impact standpoint, but it's important, and we hear about this every day, how climate is evolving and changing around us, and to the extent that we can understand that and be more forthright in what really we should be doing, or at least trying to accomplish, and at least being honest with what is out there and should be addressed, I think is an important part. But we can't do it as a committee of 5. We're going to need the community involvement, and that means people watching on TV or sitting out in the audience, people in our community getting engaged and getting interested. There will be things that we can all do. It needs to have a cool marketing effect to it, because we know how difficult it is anytime we put together something in this community to get other people engaged. And so I tried to get my 8-year-old to read through our brochure and give me some unique and creative names that we might be able to use. They were a little too creative, so I won't use them here tonight. And just I would say that even involving kids, because they are going to be the ones that inherit our community beyond us and after us, and this will have the most impact for them in the long run. That may be another way that we evaluate that. But it's a very, I think, important part of what we're doing. It is something that has been planned and budgeted. And it is something that we should take quite seriously, and frankly, we should be the leaders in this county for driving climate action plans forward. So if there's any questions, I think we'd probably have to defer most of them, but we've got a good team. We've got a good team together, and I think this is the right process to go through.
Well, certainly our new Yountville Connected system may be a good way to get that engagement, since we don't typically have it in person. So maybe over the internet and email we'll get it.
And I think, Mayor, to just respond to that comment, that Yountville engagement, Mind Mixer, or whatever the name of it is called, came out of this Climate Action Committee. It actually was a decision that we made to try to involve the community, or at least in part.
Great. My only question is, do we know what we're getting for $75,000? Is it really just kind of open-ended? I'll look this direction if necessary.
I think the town manager might have a response.
Actually, I'm going to allow Nathan to come up and answer the question.
Perfect.
What the plan is, it's a clear set of strategies, so that will lead towards the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. And so different programs that we can introduce to encourage smarter use of energy by our residents, as well as new developments, to work with our contractors to make sure every new development, all current developments going in, are using as clean energy as possible. And so it will be these formal written standards that we'll be able to abide to in order to reach those target goals.
Would the entire $75,000 budgeted be going toward the consultant for the recommendations, or would that potentially be going into some programming like you were just talking about?
It'd be going right now towards the drafting of the plan, towards the consultant who would be doing all the environmental research as well. That would go into creating this plan so that our targets will be realistic goals rather than just, hey, it would be nice if we can cut this by a good number. They'll have some data behind these numbers and behind our goals that we'll set.
And how did we get to the $75,000? Was that based on other...
We had a preliminary estimate from the consultant that we were working with up till this stage, doing the inventories and then the visioning process for the climate action plan. So we've earmarked that amount as thinking that's what we could get this work effort done for. We'll issue an RFP and we'll interview qualified consultants, and we'll be looking at best consultant for best price, so it could come in less.
Sure. Okay.
Excuse me, but
Councilmember Dornbecker?
Isn't included in that $75,000, doesn't that take into account the cost for hosting, multiple
Right.
outreach to the community and having them attend and staff time? So I don't think that the consultant is going to be paid $75,000. I think that it's going to be,
Services and programming, including the
Yeah.
consultant.
Yeah, the
Right
consultant
now,
would be...
you have a budget, and I think the budget includes a number of potential things, including the extensive community outreach, various things that will go in. So we'll put together various components, some of which will go towards the consultant once that's all finalized. So that will be addressed in the scope, and then it's a working budget through the various activities. And the Council Ad Hoc Committee has made it very clear to staff that we need to try to come up with some different approaches, because we want the community's input. We need the community's input, and we're going to have to be creative to try and figure out how to engage people and get that input. So we realize with that extent that, just inviting people to a council meeting is not going to do it.
Right. Okay. So is there action to be had by the council? Either of our ad hoc committee members might want to make a recommendation that we take this action. I think Councilmember Dornbecker just lost her page.
I did.
So Councilmember Hall, did you?
I'm trying to find the action.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the recommendation of the ad hoc committee to move forward in developing a climate action plan for the town of Yountville.
Second.
Is that official enough direction, since it's already budgeted?
Yeah, that's the recommendation here on the staff report.
Okay, all in favor?
Fine, thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you to the ad hoc committee for all the work that went into that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Nathan.
It's just the beginning.
Just the beginning. So we'll have to come up with something like the Cash for Grass name, or something maybe more interesting than that.
Wear your cap.
Well, let's not try to
Go
work it
ahead.
out right here. Let's get the community engagement. We're going to move forward.
Email me any ideas. I'm happy.
We're going to move forward to our next item before somebody gets in trouble. Napa County Library Commission. We had an interview earlier this evening, and
Yes,
we're
we
going
did.
to hear the results.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We interviewed for the Yountville representative position on the Napa County Library Commission. That's to fill the unexpired term for Linda Concilian, who resigned in March due to relocating out of the Yountville area, and her term was through June 30th, 2014. Town staff posted a notice of vacancy on April 4th with no applicants received, and then extended that application to May 16th. At the close of that filing period, we received an application from Mr. Owens, who Town Council interviewed earlier this evening. Unique to this staff report is that during the vacancy period, staff was informed by the county that the term of office for this position actually was due to expire January 31st, 2015, which staff was unaware of this during the recruitment process. So staff conducted outreach with the county to request that we appoint any applicants to fill the unexpired term of Linda Concilian, and then to reappoint that individual to serve the next full 3-year term. It is the county's preference to provide new notice of vacancy at the conclusion of this expired term, but it's also a relatively short term of only 6 or 7 months. So to streamline this process, staff is asking that council waive protocols for the notice of vacancy in January to appoint Mr. Owens to the unexpired term through January 31st, 2015, and then during that agenda item, we'll bring it on consent to reappoint for the full 3-year term. So council can go with staff's recommendation if there's a preference. This is council policy decision based on protocols. If you would like to not proceed with staff's recommendation, then you would direct staff to go ahead and renotice sometime in December for that next 3-year term, and then we would call a special meeting to interview any applicants that we receive during that time, and it would be up to council to either reappoint Mr. Owens at that time or someone else of their choosing, of your choosing. So at that point, council interviewed Mr. Owens earlier today and has submitted their vote tallies and has unanimously recommended appointment of this individual to serve on the Napa County Library Commission. And without further questions,
And Mr. Owens is aware of that
yes,
situation with the terms.
Yes, that's correct. I spoke to him directly, and he is fine with that. Yes.
So if we take your recommendation and put this on consent at the expiration of the existing term, he realizes that he may
Yes,
automatically
he
be
does.
kicking into another term.
Yes, he does.
Great. Any questions about the report? You need formal action for us to
Appoint, yes, please.
accept the vote that we took earlier?
Yes.
And so the action would be to appoint Mr. Scott Owens to the Napa County Library Commission Yountville representative position.
So moved.
Did we hear the vote?
She said
It was unanimous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
So Councilmember Hall, seconded by Dornbecker. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And thank you to Mr. Owens for not only an impressive interview, but for stepping up to serve his relatively new hometown of Yountville. Do we have any staff informational reports?
Go right ahead.
Yes,
yes,
we
we
do.
do.
Oh, you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. I mentioned that the Madison Yacht Project is under construction, so today got some pictures. It's called full depth reclamation, so they've removed all the pavement and now they're mixing cement into the base. So this isn't something that Yountville has done. It doesn't happen very often in most cities because it's expensive. But this road was so far deteriorated that we pretty much had to punt and start over. So I got some pictures today and just wanted to talk about where we are in the process. We have done media releases. We've given notices to the property owners, sent out a newsletter. But just want to give you sort of an overview of what's been happening. So yesterday the pavement was removed. They stripped it all off the streets on Yount, between Hopper Creek and the cemetery, and on Madison between Washington and Yount. They set up 1-lane traffic control. We've detoured all trucks, so they're not supposed to go through there during construction. We've had a few rogue trucks, but it hasn't been too bad. So what they do is they lay cement out on the pavement, out on the road bed, and then they have a truck that mixes that in with the existing aggregate base that's there and some soil that's underneath that, about 15 inches deep. And then they mix it with water, and then they let it cure. They come back with a compactor, so we get a good strong base, and then a roller to make it smooth. Then they do some dust control, and then they switch and do the other side. So tomorrow they'll be doing the other side of Madison, the other side of Yount. So this is a picture of the trucks that are, the first truck there is just, it's a cement powder, the same stuff you get ready mixing for fence posts and stuff, and that just lays it there on the road in front of the mixing truck. So there's a water truck connected to a mixing truck, and this is similar to what we did with the lime treatment on the Highway 29 bike path. And they just go and they grind like a big rototiller 15 inches of road base and cement and water into the street. Then this machine comes again and it mixes it up, makes a good, we have it tested to make sure that we have a good mixing of the cement and the road base material. And they come by with what's called a sheep's foot roller, and this compacts it to about 95% compaction, which is our requirement, and it is tested. And then they have a blade that smooths it off. It's kind of like what they use for snow removal, but this is to grade out the road pavement. And then the smooth drum roller goes in and makes it ready for the asphalt concrete. So after this weekend, they'll come back and they'll start paving the 2 lifts of asphalt concrete to get it make it look like a blacktop again. We have some dust control and hydration for the cement, so we need to cure. Just like a sidewalk needs to cure, the street needs to cure as well. So next will be the curing over the weekend, and then the asphalt concrete will be next Monday and Tuesday, and then striping the week of the 7th of July, and then we anticipate coming back to the town council to accept the project on August 5th. So with that, I can answer any questions, or I guess it's a staff information report, so they're mostly just for your information.
I would just say, since I was out there this afternoon, the photos do not do justice to the dust or the noise.
And the vibration of the roller.
And I was surprised. I'm not sure all of the intentions of the residents, but there were many residents out watching the whole process, probably because they were very aware that it was going on. But as I was mentioning to at least one, hopefully within a couple weeks, we'll just be looking at the beautiful roadway and forget all the inconvenience.
And the piece of Yount Street north of Yountville Crossroad is about a 23 on the pavement condition index. So when that jumps up to 100, we should have a nice increase in our pavement condition indexes. We got a grant this year for updating our pavement management program. So they'll be doing the assessment here next few months. And we do anticipate that probably our average pavement condition index for all the streets in town will probably be above 80, which will be 10 points or more above American Canyon, which is the next best in the county. And that will also help us with the Measure T once that funding comes in place for house and sales tax. So we'll also be able just to do keeping our streets well maintained.
And just from a reference standpoint, we're funding nearly the same amount of money for our road system as the county of Napa is.
Okay, we'll just let that just hang out there and move on to the next informational report.
Yes, not nearly as exciting as the street project, but with the council's formal approval earlier this evening on the monthly utility billing conversion, staff has been working behind the scenes, and we've got a letter. It's actually all printed, postmarked, ready to go out tomorrow morning to all of our customers, notifying them of the change. And we're also going to reach out to property owners who may have tenants and let them know as well. So we'll be doing a big outreach. And so far, the informal feedback we've gotten from the few people that we have informed has been very positive. So we'll be moving along with that.
Very good.
I have a question.
Question.
Thank you. So Kathleen, does that mean that if people are on the auto pay, it's going to, instead of charging once every 6 weeks, whatever it is, it's going to auto pay every 3 or 4?
Yes.
Okay.
One time a month rather than every other month. And that will be explained in the letter that you'll receive.
Okay.
So you won't have to do
You don't have to make a
anything.
change to...
No, you don't. You don't. And we're obviously still doing a lot of outreach and encouraging people who haven't signed up for auto pay to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other reports? Seeing none, I will very quickly, in terms of council meeting reports, I did attend the City Selection Committee meeting today. Basically, Calistoga Vice Mayor Michael Dunsford was rotated into the new position as chair for this next year. And also at the Napa County Flood Control Water Conservation District, we did adopt the 2014-15 budget. And at our next meeting, we will be touring the bypass. And it is a pretty amazing transformation that the bypass has been taking in these last couple of weeks with the significant excavation. So if people are in that neighborhood, I think they said the 3rd Street Bridge and the Soskell Bridge are great vantage points to see how it's really coming together. Any other specific reports? Seeing no others, I think we have a 4th of July fireworks coming up that's happening, and we will not be meeting prior to that.
Shall we clarify the fireworks will be the evening of the 4th of July, and there will be extra bus service funding to bring people to and from?
The extra bus or shuttle
Trolley.
service or bus
Extra
service?
shuttle service.
Shuttle service.
Yountville
Trolley.
shuttle.
The trolley.
The trolley.
Yes. The Yountville trolley. And the
There are some changes. So the Veterans Home festivities used to begin at noon. They are starting until 6 p.m. this year. So 6 p.m. to 9:30 is the fireworks, and we'll have two shuttles, trolleys running from 6 to after the fireworks. So
Great.
typically 10:30.
Very good. Any other announcements? No?
Oh, I have an
I
announcement.
have a
Councilmember Muller?
question. So, since you have 2 trolleys, will there be 2 cell phones that people can call in on? How's that going to work?
They can call the main number, and they're dispatching them. One of them typically will be on call. The other one will just be running back and forth. But
Oh,
they can
okay.
still
One will
call
be
the
on
same
call, and
numbers.
one will just
Yeah.
be taking people because we pretty much know they're there and they need to come here.
Here, yeah.
Okay.
And the other one will be on call.
Same
Okay,
number.
thanks.
Okay. Good. Councilmember Hall?
We're done with all the other reports.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you that's right. You did
Yes,
warn me you had this report.
I just wanted to make one special comment to this community, as we are a member of this great nation, and our U.S. men's national soccer team beat Ghana yesterday 2-1 in a barn burner. We have 2 games left, and I trust that all of you who are at home in the vicinity of my house understand that when I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, that it's for our country. Thank you for your understanding, and go USA.
Ditto.
You're not a member of the American what are they, the official no the official fan
The Outlaws?
the Outlaws American
not
Outlaws.
Not as far as you know.
Take the fifth.
Thank you for not painting your face for the council meeting
Well,
tonight.
that was yesterday.
There's a tournament going on right now?
Yeah. Thanks for indulging me.
You're welcome. So that's it for the critical announcements of the town council, and I see that we do have one closed session item.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the town council, we'd ask the town council to recess at this time into closed session for the town of Yountville versus Swain Construction.
And after that, we do not expect any reportable action, correct?
That is correct.
So for those signing out, we will adjourn to our next regular meeting, not on July 1st, but Tuesday, July 15th at 6 p.m. So thank you very much, everyone. Go USA.